Hey everybody, welcome back to my coverage of the PogChamps 3 tournament. This is the final Group C match, Michelle Khare versus Tubbo, and they're both going to the consolation bracket. This will just determine the seeding. Tubbo is the rating favorite by a little bit, but they're both low rated and new to chess players. Anything could happen, so without further ado, let's get right into the games. Tubbo has the white pieces for the first game. He starts with e4. We've seen Tubbo play classically as white, so let's see what he goes for. We have c5 from Michelle and bishop c4 from Tubbo. This bishop c4 move is already sort of a mistake. I almost want to call this a mistake, not even an accuracy. But yeah, when you play this bishop c4 move in the Sicilian, you're allowing black to play e6 and d5 later on, and black will just get a huge center and tempo on this bishop. You really can't play bishop c4 on the second move in the Sicilian as white. So, however, Tubbo has said that he kind of just plays whatever in the opening. I'm pretty sure, I think that's what he said, so we'll just have to see if it works out for him. We have knight c6 from Michelle and now knight f3 from Tubbo, e6 and now castles from Tubbo, and now we have this e6 and d5 break from Michelle. So this will gain another tempo on this bishop here, and Michelle definitely punishing Tubbo for that early bishop c4. We have bishop b5 from Tubbo, and this is already another mistake. You definitely should take this, because otherwise you're just losing this pawn for free. So Michelle does go for this d takes e4, and now we have knight e5 pressuring this c6 knight. We have queen c7 defending, and now also attacking this knight here, and Tubbo moves it to knight g4. We have bishop e7 now from Michelle and knight c3 from Tubbo, just continuing to develop. But you can see, black is slightly better here. Black has a small lead in development and better control of the center, because white has spent time moving this knight and this bishop around. But anyway, we have knight f6 now from Michelle, and this gives Tubbo a chance to exchange off this knight. So will he go for it? No, he simply plays rook e1, but it's okay because this knight is defended anyway. We have castles from Michelle, and now knight takes e4 from Tubbo. So it looks like Tubbo can win a pawn here. He's got two attackers on this e-pawn. Michelle only has one defender, but it doesn't actually work out, because after knight takes e4 and rook takes e4, which happened in the game, black now has this move f5, which is a fork on the rook and the knight. So yeah, you actually do not win a pawn here. You lose a piece as white. But will Michelle see this f5 move? No, instead we have h6 from Michelle, and yeah, so f5 definitely would have been better. Just a bit of a missed tactic there from Michelle. We have b3 from Tubbo, now looking to develop this bishop, fianchetto it to b2, and a6 from Michelle. Once again, Michelle had this f5 that she did not go for. This is now kicking away the bishop, so Tubbo goes ahead and trades it off with bishop takes c6, and now queen takes c6, and d3. Michelle, one thing to note is that this f5 move no longer works, because now white can escape the fork with knight to e5, gaining a tempo on the queen, and when the queen moves, you can save your rook. So just noting that this f5 move is no longer available. We have rook d8 from Michelle, putting her rook on that half-open file. And this actually allows a really nice piece sacrifice that I'm not expecting Tubbo to see this, but I just want to share this with you guys. Tubbo here actually could have played knight takes h6 check, and after g takes h6, Tubbo could have gone for queen g4 check. And the idea is you're just attacking the black king, and you may pick up this h6 pawn later. If black tries to defend with king h7, now you have queen h5, and black can no longer defend this pawn. You can't defend with bishop g5 because this bishop simply hangs. The pawn doesn't defend it because it's pinned. So you wouldn't want to play king h7 here. Instead, if you try for king f8, well, now white can come and take this pawn with check, and after king e8, we could have something like queen g8, king d7, and queen takes f7. White has already regained 3 pawns for the piece, and black has a very exposed king, and white is still on the attack. So this would definitely be a good position for white, and white definitely could have gone for this. However, we do not have this knight takes h6 from Tubbo. That would have been brilliant if he saw it, but instead we just have bishop b2, just a simple developing move, and this is totally fine as well. We have f6 from Michelle. Maybe she was worried about this bishop aiming at this g7 square, and she wanted to block the diagonal. Not really too sure about this move. I think simply, I think bishop d7 would have been a much better move here from Michelle. But we have f6 and now queen d2 from Tubbo. And this simply hangs a rook, actually, because when you move your queen to d2, now your queen is no longer defended. When it was on d1, it was defended by the rook here. So now you're actually giving black the opportunity to play queen takes e4. And if you take back, then you lose your queen. So here Michelle could have won a rook, but will she see this queen takes e4 move? No, she does not. She plays f5 instead, now going for this fork. However, it doesn't work anymore because white actually, not only does white have this knight e5 move that they can throw in, but instead, actually, knight e5 doesn't even work here anymore because simply queen takes e4 and the pawn is still pinned. But white has a different defensive resource now. With the queen on d2, they can play queen to c3, and this threatens checkmate. So you don't have time to take the rook or the knight. So here black needs to play a move like bishop f8, and now this knight e5 move does work because the queen is no longer pinned. So we do have queen c7, queen c3 by Tubbo, and now what will Michelle do to defend her g7 square? She plays bishop f6, and this doesn't really defend the g7 square very well. Tubbo can simply take this bishop, and this is with check, so if Michelle takes this, then Tubbo will simply take this pawn and threaten checkmate. Once again, Michelle will not have time to take this rook, and this will be very good for white to play. So Michelle here doesn't even take this knight. She instead plays king f7, which, after you play bishop f6 here, it's pretty much, that's actually pretty much GG, yo. But we have king f7 anyway. And now Tubbo saves his rook with rook to c4, a perfectly fine move. We have rook d4 now, and Tubbo picks up this c-pawn. Also now hitting the queen and hitting the rook twice, so white will win even more material here. We have queen d6 defending the rook, but it's not enough. Tubbo has this bishop-queen battery, so he can still pick up the rook, which he does with queen takes d4. We have queen takes d4, and now bishop takes d4, and white is up a rook and a knight. So white is definitely winning here. Let's see if Tubbo can convert. We have king g6 and rook e1, getting that last piece into the game. Bishop d7 and knight takes d7. Yeah, this bishop d7 move really just hung a piece. It really is hard here, but much better would have been simply g takes f6, taking this hanging knight instead of hanging one of your own pieces. By the way, this knight was trapped on the previous move, so actually the knight could have gone to e8. So yeah, not sure about this king g6 move. Definitely g takes f6 would have been a better try from Michelle there. But yeah, Tubbo didn't bother to save this knight, and after Michelle hung a piece, well, now Tubbo's knight is finally saved. So we have rook d8 from Michelle and rook c7 from Tubbo, now defending that knight. b5 from Michelle and bishop b6 from Tubbo, setting up some discoveries with this rook. Maybe Michelle will miss it. Rook takes e6 was also playable here, just picking up more material and going for checkmate. However, we have bishop b6 instead, and now b4 from Michelle. Rook a7, staying connected to the knight, and also a discovered attack on Michelle's rook. Will Michelle see it? Yes, she does. She plays rook e8, now also defending this e6 pawn. We have rook takes a6 and now e5, stepping into some discoveries with the bishop. However, Tubbo can also just take this pawn now, which he does with knight takes e5, and this is check. Here you have to play king h7. It's the only square where there are no good discoveries with this knight, which will force the rook trade. However, Michelle moves to g5 instead, which now allows this knight to come to f3 or f7, picking up the rook. We have knight f3 from Tubbo now, and he does see this tactic, so he will pick up Michelle's last piece. After king h5, as long as Tubbo takes this rook here, he will be good to go, basically. There's no way he can lose this game after that. So he does take this rook. Rook takes e8, and now we have g5 from Michelle. Maybe Tubbo will stalemate. We have g3 and now g4 from Michelle. Rook g8, and not even caring that this knight is hanging, simply cutting off the king now we have G takes F3 from Michel, and Tubbo just going straight for the checkmate brings his rook to A7. We now have we have F4 now, and here rook to A5 actually would have been an immediate checkmate. However, we have G takes F4 instead. This is not a stalemate because the king can come to H4, so Michel still has one legal move. We have king H4 from Michel, and now rook H7 from Tubbo, threatening checkmate here on H6. So Michel defends with king H5, and here Tubbo plays sort of a funny move. He plays bishop C5, putting Michel in Zugzwang. So after Michel's only legal move, king H4, now we have rook takes H6, which is checkmate. So yeah, Tubbo takes the first game. There was this one variation that I forgot to show here of how Tubbo could stalemate, how he could potentially stalemate this. If he played rook H7 here after F takes G3, if he played H takes G3, this would be stalemate as black has no legal moves. So that is just one way Tubbo could stalemate, but we have this sequence of moves instead. So Tubbo does get the first win. And yeah, Tubbo gets the first win. Very, very good game from both sides. Couple blunders, but you know, what can you do? So will Michel be able to bring it back in the second game? Who knows? We'll just have to see. So I don't think I have anything else to say about this game or this match. So you can check out my PogChamps 3 playlist up there and check out the next game of the match over on the left side of the screen. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Stay awesome. Love you guys.